Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie making process. Hosted by dinosaurs. They were wiped out by an asteroid and getting their revenge by turning into oil and slowly suffocating us to death. Huh, clever girl. Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Harley's Gourmet Dog Food for the classy canine, not for human consumption. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we are filmmakers, writers, actors, storytellers, liars. I don't know. You pick your label and it all works. And we like to use all our lying capabilities and deconstructing stories and films and seeing how they work. And Todd, I'm having like the best week ever for me. It started, I went to Atlanta for a new client. We got to go see this really old, nearly 100-year-old theater that's been in Atlanta for just ages and ages, built right at the start, or opened right at the start of the Great Depression, actually. Not how you usually want to start a theater, but from there, got back home and was able to like log into Hulu, and all kinds of magical things opened up. There's this new series from the same creators from behind Normal People, which I was a big fan of. And they just dropped a new one from Sally Rooney, one of her novels, adapted by Lenny Abrahamson. Completely not how you pronounce that, I'm sure, but and I just loved it. And I'm just kind of easing my way through that. And then yesterday I wake up to find two new films from two of my favorite actors, that Vanessa Kirby, who is just brilliant. Pieces of a Woman just melted my face. And now she has this new film out, or new to me at least, called Italian Studies, where again, she is just absolutely entrancing. And then I'm also just a massive, massive fan of Samara Weaving, who is just an absolutely astronomical talent. Everything she does, she elevates the material. If you ever feel like as a writer, I'm just not that good, hire great actors and they will just elevate your material. And she is just incredible to watch. If you watch like probably her last 5 or 10 things in her list, you're going to have an amazing time, because I just think she brings so much. And now today I am on on Skype with 3 of my favorite people on the planet. My God, dude, it just doesn't get any better. Of course, you yourself, Todd, but we are also joined by the indomitable Joe Howes and the equally indomitable Heather Howes, all taking place from New Zealand. Welcome to the show, you two.
Yeah.
Yoda.
Nice.
How's it going?
Amazing.
Hi.
I am so impressed with y'all. Y'all have just a laundry list of titles that go next to your name. Heather is a singer and actress. She is an incredible burlesque performer, along with being like a therapy massage. I forget your exact title. Perfect. And also you have some history working for one of these weird places that they call Weta. You did some work on the workshop side to round out the two of you. And then Joe, my God, drummer, musician, you do visual effects, you work for Weta Digital / Unity, and I'm blanking on all the other things. Oh, you're an actor, like, and a writer.
Duh, how we know him.
That's how we met. It's through your brilliant acting. My God, y'all two, how are y'all doing today?
We're doing good.
Yeah, doing fantastic this morning. We've been looking forward to this / I don't know about Heather. I've been so nervous about it because like I just love the Pestle. Like I was just in the shower the other morning listening to your rant about Netflix, washing my underarms, going, "Oh yeah, Wes, let him have it. It's such a good idea." I think so highly of you guys, and I think so highly of the show. And it's like my worry is, well, yeah, and then Joe ruined the Pestle. But yeah, well, try not
possible,
to do that,
my friend. Not possible. You bring us to it. You guys bring us to another level. For real.
And Heather, I'm so excited to have you on. I
oh my gosh, thank you.
Love your energy, and so I'm happy you're here. Hopefully, you're equally as happy and to do us this favor.
Oh my God, yes. Check out the outfit today.
Yes.
I have my even star.
Elvish.
Oh my God.
I have my leaf earrings.
Absolutely adore it.
Yeah, you remember Chris and Cassie from the Blade Runner 2049 podcast. Cassie made those earrings.
My earrings.
Whoa.
She makes
That's
lots
amazing.
of things.
Such a good
That
episode.
was one of our favorite episodes. As we go back and look, we've talked about our favorite episodes, and that one definitely was up there. I loved our Europa report one and stuff, and anytime we have like you know, really interesting guests and stuff, but that one just took it to another level just because of the insight that they brought into the making of such an amazing film. So
right.
Yeah. We were at a Viking festival with them last weekend called the Norsewood Viking Festival, and Chris brought his forge out, and he was forging stuff out there. And he just started talking to this woman about how, well, in the archaeological record, bronze lasts a lot longer in the ground. Iron just wants to become rock again. So we just don't have a lot of iron artifacts, but we have tons of bronze artifacts. So that's why bronze gets overrepresented in the understanding of blacksmithing and history. And I'm just watching him like that guy he's just fascinating. I just love listening to him.
I love that.
God. Well,
how does Weta find these guys and girls? Like really? Because I don't know them. They're not in my life.
Well, they're from Seattle.
I think Chris and Cassie came to them, through the convention circuit. Chris was setting up Smog during the Hobbit times. So he set it up in Mexico City, San Diego Comic-Con.
Which
and,
there's still
they
one
just
in our
loved him
airport.
because how could you not?
My God. Well, I'm excited to have y'all here. I think this is going to be a really fun episode. Yeah. So what are they here to discuss, Todd?
Yeah, today we are covering Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. So if you haven't seen that film, please pause this episode and go watch it, because if we're going to spoil anything, it's going to be everything on this one.
100%. We'll talk about so many things. I will try to contain myself and open up the floor as much as possible. But I do want to touch on some of the story and writing and ask the question, is there a Deus Ex Machina problem? Also want to look at a little bit of the sound design and some of the music cues. And of course, I want to have a showdown, Joe versus Heather, Lord of the Rings trivia challenge extravaganza.
Oh, no. The pupil has become the master.
That's
see.
Right. We're going to talk about all that and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. Gandalf and Aragorn lead the world of men against Sauron's army to draw his gaze from Frodo and Sam as they approach Mount Doom with the One Ring. It's directed by Peter Jackson, screenplay by Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens and Peter Jackson, based on the novel by JRR Tolkien, cinematography by Andrew Lesnie. It's starring Elijah Wood as Frodo, Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn, Ian McKellen as Gandalf, Orlando Bloom as Legolas, John Rhys-Davies as Gimli, Sean Astin as Sam, Billy Boyd as Pippin, Dominic Monaghan as Merry, Miranda Otto as Eowyn, Liv Tyler as Arwen, and Andy Serkis as Gollum.
I didn't think it would end this way.
End? No, the journey doesn't end here. Death is just another path. One that we all must take. The grey rain curtain of this world rolls back, and all turns to silver glass. And then you see it.
What? Gandalf. See what?
White shores. And beyond. A far green country. And a swift sunrise.
That isn't so bad.
No.
feels.
It's so hard to write good dialogue. I think my problem as a writer is I overwrite, and so I'm getting better and better at going back through my writing and deleting, leaving more to the actor. Because if you look at that little exchange on the page, it's like 4 sentences, but it's all the breath that they take between the moments. It's everything that's happening between the lines, and turning what on the page is 3 words together into 3 different sentences, 3 different beats, or what have you. And it's just beautiful just to watch Pip as Gandalf is speaking, right? We're not even watching Gandalf delivering this really great monologue. We're watching Pippin, and it's just gorgeous. So all that waxing aside, Todd, I definitely want to hear from the guests, but with all good things, I have to start with you. And so I want to know if 2 things right off the bat. One, where does this, it's not really fair to rank these movies, though everyone does, because they're really one big movie. But I'm going to want to hear where this ranks in the 3. But then 2, secondly, I also want to hear if this, if this is a worthy conclusion to this epic story.
Yeah. So man, favorite of the 3. I would say, I mean, the first one is just incredible, and the way that it ends just really hits me hard every single time. But I would say this one's probably second, only because the very end is a little cheese, but but when they're at Mount Doom, every time. I mean, I've seen this movie several times, and when they're at Mount Doom and Gollum falls in, and Frodo's hanging there, and Sam comes and he says, "Don't you let go." I cry every time, every single time. This time was no different. And for me, this is a story. This is like a story that like anybody can really get behind, because everybody needs a Sam. Like, Sam is the story to me. For whatever, I don't know if it's maybe some people see themselves as Frodo. And that's fine, but I just love Sam. Sam is the one who, he saves the day every single time. And I think we've talked about this, when we've covered others of the films, but this one more than most, just, he drags him the whole way, especially now, because he's so, Heather's got the feels too.
Already.
Yeah. And so those moments, like the moment you just played, is such a beautiful moment, and the timing of the delivery, the fact that we are looking at Pippin makes it even more impactful, because then it feels like he's talking to us rather than just he's talking. And then the battle scenes are incredible. And even though we have a lot of exposition, we need exposition in a film like this. It is so grand. There are so many people, so many characters in it, and they all have names that none of us have today. So we need to hear them repeated. We need to know where this guy is going when he rides off on his horse. We need to know all this stuff, and they give it to us in a way that is repeated and yet doesn't feel over repetitious. It feels like it's a simple reminder of either where they are or where they're going. And that's so hard to do. We talk about on this podcast all the time that exposition is very dangerous, because it's in a lot of ways it can assume that the viewer is being led along, like pulled along, or is less intelligent, like, oh, I've got to give you this information. But in this regard, because the world is so big and there's so many players, they kind of use that, and that they don't overuse it. And I think that it's masterfully done. The dialogue in those scenes that you just showed, Wes, and you were just talking about the dialogue and how hard it is, especially in those really emotional moments, is used very sparingly. Like, it is so easy for Sam, as Frodo is hanging there, for Sam to say more than he does. But all he says is, "Don't you let go." It's like, that's maybe one other line, but that's really it. He said, and then grab, like, take my hand or something. And that's it. He doesn't wax poetic. There's no time for that. And you can, and the performances are so good because you can see it in Frodo's eyes. Like it's change. He just changes. And he's like, okay, I'm going to do this next thing, but then it's not over. They try to escape. They can't escape. They're just, but Sam makes it known, this is where I belong. I belong here with you still to the very end, that dude. And I watched all three of these with my son last year, and he was absolutely floored every step of the way, but especially in that. And Sam was his favorite. And before I even said anything, it was over. I said, what do you think, dude? He goes, Sam was awesome. Like, that was the first thing he said out of his mouth. But everything, all about it. And I'm going to get off my soapbox. Everything about it is just beautiful. I thought the slow motion stuff at the end I could do without, but it's other than that, it's just an absolute masterpiece. How you make something like this, I have no idea. And it's so funny that I've seen directors talk about, like Christopher Nolan. I've seen him talk about, like, I come up with an idea that I have no idea how to do. And I think, okay, that's an idea I want to go after because I have no idea how to do that. And that's actually refreshing to someone like myself who, a lot of times I don't know how to do what I'm doing, but I just do it anyway, or I figure it out along the way. I make mistakes along the way, and I wonder how much of this Peter Jackson, before he started the first one, absolutely, I know exactly how to do this, and how much of it he leaned on his cast and his crew and the visual effects and everything, because it's such a massive undertaking. But I'm so glad that they did it. It's a masterpiece. Absolutely, to me.
Heather, I would love to hear some of the background. I don't know when the rings came into your life, but my assumption is that it's correlated to about the same time one Joseph Howes entered your life, but maybe not. Maybe you've been on this since elementary, just ahead of the game.
Well, you would think so, that it was like maybe in our marriage vows, but no. I will tell you that the song we walked into to get married was the love theme from Aragorn and Arwen, though.
That's awesome.
Even in Las Vegas, in a small chapel, I picked that song as my walking in music. So, no, but it's been in my life since I was a kid. I remember my brother watching The Batchy, The Hobbit. So way back then. So technically, it was before you, Joseph. But I would say full throttle, pulling down charts and graphs. Yes, since we've been together 20 years ago. So.
That's awesome. And do you have a favorite of the three? And how does the Return of the King land for you as the concluding film?
I particularly like all of the endings. We've been doing all this week. We call it cramming, but we know lots of stuff already. But cramming for all of this extra deep dive. So there's a few YouTubers who do deep dives. They give you a map and they fill in so much story that we don't see in the films. But for me, I'd have to say Return of King is probably my favorite. One of my things, because I'm a singer, the thing that gets me every single time, of course, also because I'm a woman, the line of I am no man every time, cheering off the couch. But the song that follows happens to be Liv Tyler, and they were trying to find a place to put it in the movie, and they decided to put it in the scene where Eowyn is healing, and Aragorn comes in to administer the elvish medicines that he had. They show his cool, his ring of bear here. So every time I hear that, like, I'm a performer. I'm like, one day I'm going to do that as a theatrical cover on stage. But that just, it's kind of a tying for the women. It's for the ladies, right? You get Liv Tyler singing that in the background while you're this scene of her, reveal that she just took out the king. So yeah.
Wow.
It's beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, sorry. That's right.
Yeah, no, I love it.
I got more.
All right, Joe. Unleash hell.
I know.
I'll just add that a couple of years ago, was it last year or the year before? The years just blend in together since COVID. We did a hike up the pinnacles, which we did that with you, Wes, when we first got here. Only Heather and I went and took the right road, so we got to go up to where Paths of the Dead was filmed. So Heather went all the way back into this deep chasm and sang that the Houses of Healing from there. And I think I've got a recording of it. And with the natural echo in the canyon walls, it was just gorgeous. So yeah, it's funny. So last night over the last 2 nights we watched Return of the King. Unfortunately, we watched the extended edition because I couldn't get my theatrical edition working. The disc wasn't working. But we were watching it with our friend Darren, who is an Oxford film professor who actually met one of Tolkien's children and is incredible, just an incredible Tolkien scholar, and his little daughter Alice. So he read the entire trilogy to Alice before showing her the films, and watching her absolutely freak out, and then pausing it and her telling us how she freaked out when Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn jump off the ships. Just seeing a kid watch it, it's so magical. It's just such a level of enjoyment. But we were having a discussion because her favorite one is Fellowship. And I feel like she's like that's amazing. She's the Pinot Noir drinker. And I'm grape juice guy. I love Return of the King. There are just so many moments. I actually listed why all the moments and you know, arguably, I would say Fellowship is the stronger film. But between Pippin's song, the Grey Rain Curtain monologue, the attack of the Rohirrim for Frodo, the Fellowship's reaction to Barad-dûr, to the Dorthonion, the Mount Doom exploding and realizing, oh my God, they're dead. You bow to no one, and farewell, my brave hobbits. All of those moments are in this film, and they're just some of my favorite cinematic moments ever. So I just can't help but every time I watch this film, I'm always looking forward to the next one of those, moments. So that's why Return of the King, and then Fellowship and Poor Two Towers always gets short shrift.
It's funny. I feel like the opposite. I feel like most people I talk to say the Two Towers is their favorite because it's got all the action, has none of the hiccups of getting going or having to wrap things up. Right. It's the Empire Strike Back theory of, man, it's all popcorn and no sitting around waiting. Like, it's just great. It's dessert for breakfast, you know?
Wow.
And so it's nice. It's refreshing to hear, you know, two people say Return of the King. I'm like Todd. For me, the Fellowship, both the book and the movie, are my favorite of the three. But mostly, I think for sure all the establishing stuff is, you know, good. But I like seeing everyone together. I always like, you know, these moments when all the team is, you know, together and more or less happy. But that's really happy, and it also makes me enjoy, I think, the end of Return of the King so much more. Is seeing them all come back together is a really great, like, oh, finally, like, we're almost all here. Poor little for Boromir, but everyone else made it.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I am curious. I might commit heresy here, but I'm curious who's gonna, you know, take my head off and launch it over the ramparts, or who like has my back. And that's to say, for the theatric, I think, in my opinion, Todd, you made a comment about the end of this film. Would you, for the theatric version, err on the side of cutting the ending down, or and saving that for the extended version, or do you think, yeah, on the one hand, you know, you're not a fan of it, but it should be there regardless?
I mean, that's an interesting question, because, like, what am I gonna? Who am I? Right? To say, yeah, like this amazing, timeless story. Yeah, but if they would have taken off 20 minutes, you know, rah, rah. Like my dad, like, whining about like pop music or something. Yeah, there are. I mean, I would, if you were really asking me, I would cut off a lot of the end of this, because it feels like it ends. It feels like it ends during the cheesy slow motion scene, right? And but I know the story. I know he has to, go off, but maybe we shorten everything. Cause then, he ends up going back to the Shire. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens. And I feel like, how long do they take? They take another 20 minutes or so?
About 50. It depends on, so in my estimation, if I were to end it, I would end it early. I would end it at the ceremony, and this is very Star Wars-esque, granted, but I would end it at the ceremony in Gondor.
Yeah.
Right, with the king.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, yeah. And from there, you shave about 14 minutes off.
And how cool would it be at the end of credits to then have, him back in the Shire? You know what I mean? That would be really cool, because the movie is over. Like it's done. You can stay to see a little bit more, but I love that suggestion to end it there, kind of Star Warsy.
Yeah, my feeling is, and I felt this in the theater, and I still remember watching it, in the theater a couple times, and you can feel the restlessness of the audience. That's what gives me pause. It's not the idea that this part of the story is bad. Obviously not. Like I want to know all this that's happening that he shows us. But as far as a theatric experience, I would probably err on the side of one nice big lifting moment where everyone is kneeling to them, right? And it emphasizes how important, and I think kind of is the capstone of a lot of the messaging that is throughout the films. And it's just a really, really strong, uplifting moment. Everyone walks out feeling good. That extra 15 minutes, I think, beats up a lot of audience. Not everyone. Like I was still good. I was good in the theater to sit and see the rest of the story. I also had to really go to the bathroom. I remember that. Like anytime you get over 2.5 hours, you start running into nature calling stuff. And so you do it with trepidation. And so I think that's a really great like final punch to send everyone out. And then for the extended versions, you do get an hour instead of an extra hour, you get like an extra hour 20. And there's, to our heart's content, it's a better home viewing experience. I don't know. This is again heresy in my views. So feel free for the two Kiwis to weigh in.
That's all right.
Well, I was going to say, Heather and I have talked a lot about the endings. Mm-hmm. So they had kind of an impossible task, because you have to make a satisfying theatrical experience for people who aren't familiar with the books and might just have wanted to go see a good film, and then they're not going to think about it after. Who are those people? And then you have the fans, like the rabid fans like myself, who are the ones who are going to talk about it and are going to be loud, and they're the ones who are going to spread the word, and you want to make them happy as well. Because if you look at the lore, like I'm like you, I was just happy to sit there and watch all the other endings that they cut out. The Scourging of the Shire, Aragorn taking the Hobbit name of Tel-Contar as his house name, Faramir saying this ends the line of the stewards, and Aragorn saying, no, I want to keep you. We'll keep the line of the stewards. Your line has served us well. You're a prince now, and you're going to control Rohan. Him traveling to Isengard and giving Fangorn and Isengard as the realm of the Ents, finding the sapling of Nimloth and using that to replant the White Tree. I would have been there for all of it, and I would have been, me and two other nerds would have been the only ones left in the theater, and everybody else would have left.
10 hours later.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it would have been, that wouldn't have been a good theatrical experience. And if you talk to filmmaker Joe, it's like, we absolutely can't do that. But if you talk to nerd Joe, can we have like 3? Can they just pick my favorite 3 and we'll put those in? So it's kind of weird, because it was a compromise where nobody's super happy, but everybody's kind of like, yeah, it's all right. So I think it speaks to them as adapters. I think they made probably a good show.
Heather, are you on that same side of, I want the extra 45 minutes of endings?
Yes. I mean, I was thinking the way Todd just said that, like if you put it in the credits, it would feel like the Marvels, right? You stick around for the extra. How many 1 or 2 more Easter eggs do we get to, to fill it in? Or
that is a great idea.
That is a really good idea.
Yeah, it's actually a really good idea. For me, like we have been doing so much deep diving over the whole the whole lore, the whole universe this week. Like, there is so much they could put in. And yes, we would be the ones sitting there 10 hours later. But yeah, that definitely is very astute of them to figure out, like, how do you just narrow it down to the few for the extended, right? But yeah, we would have sat there forever if you'd let us, if you'd given it to us. But yeah, that would be a really hard decision to make, right? Like, how would you choose and narrow it down to those few that you did have? So yeah. Oof.
That's awesome.
Tough choice.
I honestly, I think I would have been happy with either of the endings you proposed as well. I think those are great points to jump off and then leave the audience wanting more.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yep.
Which is awesome. to be wanting more after, you know, a 3+ hour.
And that exactly. I think that's kind of where I was landing, was that I knew everyone that left that theater the times that I was in there. No one was like, give me another minute. Everyone was like, roll the credits. They were just aching for the credits by the end of it. And by contrast, like, a little earlier ending does have that feeling. And Todd, that's just a genius idea. Like, yeah, post credits kind of solves all that in one go. You get the satisfaction.
Did you record that genius his comment?
That'll be the show intro from here on out. It'll just be that.
Documented.
Todd, that was a genius idea. Just on loop.
On a loop. Like, so I do want to touch on a few things, and it'll circle us back to some core ideas. One of the things, so I watched it twice. I watched it last night, and I had no intention of writing a single note. I just wanted to sit and enjoy the movie, right? And of course, whenever you do that, right, you just like immediately start having all the thoughts. And it was just all these beautiful small moments of hope, especially at the early in the film. We jump off, right? Sam to Frodo, he's asking, about the food, and Sam's like, well, if we ration it, we'll have enough. And Frodo's a little confused. Enough for what? The journey home. And it's Frodo's small little reaction to Sam's audacious hope. And it's just, you just live on his face, and he gives you nothing, but you see it all at the same time. Like, that's a good, to me, like, Kuleshov of editing, and just the implication is there. He doesn't have to do a thing acting wise, just watch him, and we feel it. We feel the contrast of what these two people are experiencing on this journey. And it's just so simple and small, and it's beautiful. Same thing with Aragorn. Not long after that, they're discussing Frodo and Gandalf. And it's interesting watching Gandalf get down in the mouth throughout this film. Like, at the beginning and at the end, he's like, it's only a matter of time. Like, guys, the game, we're not winning this game. He's like an inch away from saying we've lost. But he doesn't quite go there to me. But Aragorn is hearing this at the beginning of the film, and he asks Gandalf, yeah, okay, what does your heart tell you? And we just sit and watch Gandalf for a moment. He's like, Frodo is alive. And it's just, it's brimming with possibility. And it's just another.
That's one of those moments you'd see that in an acting class, someone taking the time and being in the moment like that. And you'd just be like, oh, incredible.
Aces.
Yeah. Maybe an acting class if you're in it.
Yeah, that's right, Joe.
Not if I'm in it. I'd be like, yeah, he's alive. Yeah. Pretty sure.
We're good. And he just picks his nose.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love just these little tiny moments. And like, and I think it's important because we need these little rays of hope. For a lot of reasons. On the one hand, you might see it as a reprieve, but I don't think it's that. I think it almost doubles down, reinforcing the danger that they're in. Like, without the imminent danger, there's no need for hope. And so by having these little moments of hope, it reinforces, like, this is all grave and everything's gloom and doom. And it's just a perfect contrast. The last thing I think you want in a film, right, is just valley, 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 valley. Like, give us a break in the clouds. Let us have a peak, and then we can go back down and face the monster, right? A breath is all it really needs. Also really love towards the end, especially after Pippin just, is a train wreck of a human being, or of a hobbit being, is that even after that, right? Gandalf takes him with him. Like Gandalf never leaves him behind. He's always grabbing him and taking him with him because he doesn't know. And it's this like humility to Gandalf that says, yeah, he's a pain in the ass and he keeps screwing everything up literally from the beginning of the journey through the end. Like he's just jamming me, man. but I don't know. He needs to be there because I don't know what he's capable of. Even if I know what he's capable of, you know, right. And I love that he's always grabbing him, even whenever Gandalf rides out to aid Faramir, right? Whenever they're retreating from the little stronghold down there, and he blasts the light from the staff, right? And the angelic singing is happening. It's another one of these little beautiful moments of hope, and it might be my second favorite moment of the series, and it's just quiet, and it's, you know, all the dragons and or whatever you want to call them, the fell beasts, you know, with Nazgul on their back, and you're just feeling like the terror. These guys are shredding Faramir's team, and Gandalf rides out, right, just by his lonesome and with a little hobbit, and just this light, and all the audio is just so perfect right here. They just kill everything except for this angelic, you know, singing, and it's simple and it's beautiful. And the cinematography is amazing right there, right? We veer off after they've, you know, flown away. We veer off to join the team, and it's just this beautiful slight move of the camera, and we feel the energy, but at the same time, it's not rocking us too hard. There's a calmness to all this energy, and God, it's just a gorgeous.
And there's like 30 essential frames at the end of that shot. That is just so beautifully match moved, and it can't have been easy, of Minas Tirith in the background there, perfectly matching the camera shake and the camera motion. You know, it was a handheld shot. And last night we actually had to pause, and Darren explained to Alice that they didn't actually build Minas Tirith. That was all done in a computer. And she was like, what? She was just amazed. I love that it was that convincing.
It was, because it's in the frame, but they don't make a point to, now let's look at Minas Tirith. It's just part of the landscape, and it's not featured. Yep. It's just there. The feature is all the emotion of the ride with Gandalf and Faramir, yep. And just to have it kind of edging in, you know, on the right third, maybe gets up to 2/3, but it's just there. God, freaking genius, man.
So well done.
The subtlety in cinematography is too often overlooked, I think. But also appreciate, you know, alongside these beautiful small moments of hope, I appreciate that there's so many dramatic moments that lack drama, and it heightens the drama all the more. Like Theoden, like his death monologue is so quiet, and it's just him saying his final words, and it's so subdued. I love it. And I love that lack of dramatic delivery, because it, you know, it pulls us in to hear what he's saying. And I think just a much stronger emotional connection by not like ramming it on our throat. Ugh, blood. I'm dying, and my last wish is for you to rule all men, or whatever he's going to say. You know, it's just like, make us lean forward. Don't make us lean back. And that's just a really good use of that kind of strategy. And same thing, you know, I don't know, maybe all of you, Joe, I think you might've been saying like the for Frodo moment, at another great little lack of drama in this incredibly dramatic moment. He just looks back at everyone after giving this incredible speech, right? They do a good job of saving a really big speech for the really big end. And he delivers that big speech, and then they quiet everything. And then he just looks back and he just says 2 words, for Frodo. And he just launches.
Because that subverted my expectation. I was expecting,
yeah.
And I swear the Russos used that for reference in Avengers Endgame, when it's like, Avengers, assemble. He whispers, assemble.
Oh, such a good call.
Good point.
And it's so good. Yeah. Like that whole charge is amazing, right? It's just long tracking shot with a little bit of shake, tons of people charging. You can tell they must have done that all day, trying to time out how they're going to feather everyone so that you can layer it in this interesting, seemingly casual way, right? It's like grunge in the 90s. Trying to look grunge was the hardest work in the world to look so casual. Oh.
My friend Johan at work was a comper for the Pelennor fields, and he was saying one of the things he was doing was replacing horsetails because and I love the idea of those horsetails are not selling the speed and the drama that we want. Something that subtle to take the time to shoot. You know, I don't know if they had CG horsetails. I would imagine they had practically shot some with like a wind, with like a fan or something, and then comped them in so that the feeling, and it's one of those things that once it's right, then you don't notice it.
Yeah.
But if it's wrong, it would detract from the feeling. So that level of care is just so labor intensive, and I so appreciate it. It's not.
God. So that brings me to one of the two big things that I want to touch on. The first is the bigger of the two. The second isn't. You just have to talk about it. But the first is Deus Ex Machina, and it's this question of, for one,
Eagles Ex Machina.
Yeah, is there one? It's a debatable thing. But the big question being, does the army of the dead feel like a Deus Ex Machina? And so, just to flesh out the idea, historically, a Deus Ex Machina comes from like Greek plays, right, where you would literally have whatever, a character drowning at sea, and then suddenly God swoops in and saves them. And instead of having them figure out a way to solve their own problem, you have this kind of magical or unearned or unexpected deliverance. And so that's been passed down as just kind of a catch-all phrase at this point of you have characters in an impossible situation and you just kind of bail them out in a way that doesn't feel honest to the story you're telling. And the word honest there can be inserted or not. That depends on the story and who's giving you the definition, I suppose. And so they literally at the end of this film ride in at the last moment with an army of unbeatable ghosts. And so there's this pretty strong argument to call it a Deus Ex Machina, right? If you can't kill an opponent, that's very godlike. It's indestructible. And so before I get into my I don't know, theory or reasoning of my yay or nay, does that feel, do you feel cheated at all with the Army of the Dead? Todd, let's go around the horn. I want to start Todd, Heather, and then Joseph R. House. I don't know what your middle name is, but it's in my mind it's R. So Joseph R. House. Todd, what do you think, man?
I just want to make sure I understand the question. So the do I feel cheated? What, that wasn't thrown at them at the very beginning kind of thing? Or
do you feel cheated that their big victory in Gondor comes on the back of a ghost army? Does that feel like
I see.
Yeah, does that feel like a little bit of an easy out for a writer to say, you know what? I don't know how to get them this victory. Let's have unkillable ghosts do all the dirty work.
Not particularly. I mean, that it's a great argument. I think it is a great argument, but I think that, it does a couple of things. One, it not that we need establishing of this, we are already in this world, but it does establish kind of like an otherworldliness that exists on either side. Could be good, could be bad, could be for one thing, could be for another thing. Whether it's good or bad doesn't matter. And there are more things at work here than what either side really understands or knows, right? And so in that case, that's kind of what I felt. I felt like it just makes the world even bigger rather than just saves them, right? Because the other thing is that this whole group is factioned, right? They're all it's all fractured, and like Frodo's here, like they're all over the place. And so winning or losing one battle in a certain way doesn't really say, like, if they were all together and that happened, Totally. I would have felt like that, because then if that ends, if they lose, the whole thing is over. Right. But in that situation, yeah. So anyway, I don't really feel like it in this regard, but I think it's a excellent argument and an excellent question.
It's a fun,
and I want to know what
Joe
thinks. Yeah, and Heather.
Same. I just think it's a fun question, even if we all come to the same conclusion. Heather, yeah.
Well, since we've been reviewing it so much this week, I don't think it does either. I think I'd have to agree with Todd on that. I know there was a great moment we were watching last night that we even paused on. Was there's a moment when he's asked them and they disappear, but they come out and he sees the ships coming in, right? He has no lines, but this look of absolute agony across Aragorn's face. We paused it and we talked about it because it's so well delivered. When you see his face and you're just like, he feels like it's over. You know what I mean? But then
looking at the ships.
Yeah, looking at the ships, he's literally defeated, and he has a moment of kind of slumping down, right? And we paused it there because it's so well done. Had he said one word, it would have ruined it. But it's the fact that he didn't say anything, right? Less is more. But yeah, I just love that moment because when, the Ghost King comes out and tells them, we fight. That moment is a little cheesy for some people, but it's kind of awesome. We were making a joke like, what were they discussing? Going, yeah, we've had a talk, and I guess we fight. You know what I mean? Like, what happened when they left the cave, right? But no, I don't think it does, because I agree with Todd. Like, they are all fractured. It's a big fell swoop of a win, because Aragorn is working so hard. But that beautiful moment, like he has tears welling in his eyes because he thinks he's lost and he did not win them over to fight for him. You know what I mean? And he looks at his Salazar ships. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'd have to agree. But no, it's not.
What do you think, Joe? Am I just being obtuse?
I think, no, that is such a great argument. And for me, it comes down to how did I feel in the moment when they came off the ship? And I think the seed for it is planted early enough that even though if you look at it on the page, it's like, I don't know if we earned this. In the moment, it felt earned because it starts in the tent when Elrond visits the camp. And, Aragorn gets called in and Theoden's leaving, and Theoden looks bummed out and angry. And it's like, who is this? Who are you talking to? And it's because Elrond had just told him Aragorn can't go with you. Aragorn has to go another way. And so Theoden's like, you're taking Aragorn from me now? And so the seed is planted there that Aragorn has to, and they go through what they go through in the Paths of the Dead. And then at Pelennor itself, we go through Gondor doing its best and failing and suffering loss. And then the Rohirrim come in and we suffer loss and we lose the king. And there's so much loss and you're so down, so that when those ghosts jump off the ship, at that point, emotionally, I don't care if it is Deus Ex Machina. I'm out of my seat and crying and going, yeah. And the best part of that moment is it's not the Army of the Dead. It's the reverse of the orcs' reactions to what are you talking about? Those two actors in prosthetics. I have to thank them for that reaction because it gives me so much energy. But the other Deus Ex Machina that Tolkien uses in the Silmarillion and the Hobbit and here is the eagles. Always seem to just come out of nowhere. And the question is, I mean, yes, Deus Ex Machina, but if you ask Heather, how do you feel about the eagles?
I adore them. They're one of my most favorite parts. Every time they show up, I'm like screaming, like, the eagles are coming. Like,
I hate the eagles, man.
Yeah. Because I guess if it feels cheap and it feels like a cheat, then you're like, eh. But if you're in the moment and your emotions are grabbed, then I think I agree that it is Deus Ex Machina. But because I have the feelings of it being earned and the feeling of loss to earn it, I think I'm okay with it.
Those are great arguments. And you you made me realize too that one thing I hadn't considered was they do set it up, and so it does kind of create a bit of a what Todd and I call a loaded gun situation, right? Chekhov's gun, the idea that you introduce a weapon, we need to see that weapon go off, and the ghosts are a weapon, and so you do make the audience want to see what they can do, and so in that way, it does add even onto everything. But the other things that I would say, in addition, that is yes, it feels earned. That's literally what I wrote. It does feel earned. And confronting the ghost army, fulfilling Aragorn's prophecy or curse, whatever you want to call that, confirms his rightful place as king. And so it's also a method to, allow us to see that he is the king. It's not just a title. It's something that, to Todd's point, like it expands the universe. And now there's this kind of mystical, deistic power at play that has chosen him, and he is the rightful heir to the crown. But maybe mostly because the ultimate victory or defeat is actually in Frodo's hands. If this had been the final battle, I think it really does feel cheap. But because it isn't, and the real battle is in Mount Doom, you don't really run too far aground of cheapening the experience to the audience. Because without Frodo, any victory in battle is moot anyway. He's the ultimate decider of whether or not they win or fail. And for that reason, it kind of allows us to be okay with it, I think, in just a multitude of ways, in every storytelling way, and of course the emotional way. And both of those things, I think, matter almost equally. I don't know which I would put above the other, but probably the emotional side.
Great point.
But yeah,
great point.
Yeah.
And so the next big moment I definitely want to look at is the one Heather brought up, and it's the I am no man. Right. This is such a massive moment, and
for the ladies.
Yeah. But what I love, I think, more than almost anything, is that this is probably the greatest moment in the entire series, and yet it goes to a supporting character. Eowyn is not a main character in the sense of she's not one of the 8. She's not in the Fellowship, one of the 9, I should say. Peace for me. But she's not like the main character. She's not even introduced until the second film, and even that she's just kind of sprinkled in. And for her to have such an incredible moment is so cool. And to me, it feels like an honest telling of a story. It gives her story, for one, a great and unexpected arc, and therein also reinforces the greater theme of the films and the story at large, that there are no small parts to play. Everyone is important if you show up, if you decide. And I love that, right? And and so I don't know if this ranks in y'all's, estimation as like the greatest moment. But I assume to a person here that this it works for every single person, right? The delivery, the destruction, the weird cosmic destruction of the Witch King, all of it, right? The beheading of the dragon, like it's just all absolute perfection of storytelling and film.
Yeah, if you've following her arc, I think it's quite beautiful to see how fragile they start off making her in a way. The way they introduce her, she's kind of fragile, and she's sort of broken, and she's worried about her uncle, and she's worried about, her brother, and everyone else, losing her cousin, right? Théoden losing his son. When you see, I love the arc of how, she talks about the lines given to her about having a nightmare or a dream about the big wave, and she's standing on the brink of it and she can do nothing about it. You go all the way from that to her feeling empowered to hide within the ranks, hiding herself as one of the men, and then getting to that moment, like that's the girl power at its most best, right? Like, but it's quite beautiful, and we
were talking last night. It would have been great to have a moment between Eowyn and Éomer, because Éomer has that whole thing of he would flee, and he'd be right to, because war is the province of men. I would have loved Eowyn to go, so how many Nazgul did you get? What's your Witch King count, buddy?
What say you, bro? Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved that moment. I thought it was such a great, just as Heather put it, I thought it was such a great arc for her, because when we meet her, it's, you know, yeah, she does have this kind of like meekness to her, and she's, you know, it looks like she's in love, but we're thinking, wait a minute, you know, like this doesn't feel right. And so where does her character go? Right.
Yeah.
And for her character to become something more than just a woman in love. Right.
Yeah.
When yeah. What?
The line she says when she says, when Aragorn asks her, what do you fear, my lady? When she says a cage, that line gets me every time, which is a subtle moment, but that has nothing to do with a man. And I love that.
Right. And
romance is great. Love is great, because we can always depict that in a wonderful way. But when she says, I fear a cage, that should resonate with every woman out there. Like, to me, it does to me.
Yeah. And so then when she delivers the line, I am no man, and we see her prophecy essentially fulfilled, it's like this, oh yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And whether we know it or not, whether we remember that, you know, I fear a cage, the most line, we feel that this is right for her, you know, for her to write off like that. It is right for her character. And so that's what this whole, her story also is what makes this such brilliant piece of writing. This whole, I mean, the trilogy, of course, but this one in particular, because obviously they started off with this character knowing where she was going to go, but didn't reveal it to us.
Yeah.
Right. And so we are given little bits throughout. So if you're writing a character, write the end, like write the results of the character first, and then lead the character into it, lead the viewer with the character into it. It's such a brilliant thing. So we're set up like, okay, she's in love. The typical thing, they meet in a bar, or wherever at a party. But then that has nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with her story. And it's set up so perfectly, because we're not told that. We're told something else, or we're led to believe something else at the beginning. So powerful.
So good. I love that. I love also, you know, switching gears into Frodo's story. It's such a challenge because the contrast between Frodo and Sam and Gollum and the rest of the party is so stark, and it's rightly so. I mean, they have to be quiet. They're sneaking. They have a different, you know, journey, which heightens the action on the other side, right? If it was just action, it may start to lose its punch, and you might start to get gassed a little bit because their story is one much more of trust, and they're dealing with all of that. And so what I love about that, though, is the whole Gollum, Frodo, and Sam setup feels like started in the Two Towers, not by introducing Gollum, but by introducing Wormtongue, and what Wormtongue was doing to Theoden and poisoning his mind. And it became this whole point of contention that needed to be resolved. And now we move forward one film, and we're seeing the same exact thing start to take place between Gollum and Frodo. He's whispering these lies into his ears. And it's only until it's too late that Frodo realizes his error. And I love that, because it also requires Sam to rise above it. And I think the great thing about this kind of story in epics is how many different things you can pull away from it. And this is going to be a Joe question here in like 10 minutes. But you can tease out so many different lessons and so many different, because it's so big, you know, over the course of 75 hours of movie, that this is going to take you through, you know, betrayals and camaraderie and war and peace and, you know, lies and courage and bravery and heroic acts. Like, there's so many things that go into this kind of story that you can tease out as a bigger lesson. But it feels really nice to be able to see Sam have to be the one who is wronged to have to then go and make peace. And that's, you don't see that enough in life, let alone in storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Darren made a great point last night. There's a scene where right, it's at the top of Cirith Ungol, where Sam is handing the ring back to Frodo, and it's well played between Sean Astin and Elijah Wood. But in the book, Frodo actually freaks out at Sam and accuses him. And so there's this moment of Sam. He's done all this heroic stuff. He climbed all the way back up the stairs, friggin' defeated Shelob, defeated orcs, got all the way up to him, and his thanks for that was to get yelled at. And throughout the story, Sam does what he does, and he's not only not seeking attention or reward for it, but when he's punished for it, that doesn't deter him. He still continues on. This is my place, is to support, which is really just so heroic. It's fantastic.
Ooh. And I also really love Elijah Wood's performance in Mount Doom. This goes back to lacking dramatic delivery, right? He's there, and he's standing, and we can see it from behind at first as Sam walks in. He's trying to assess the situation, and he's calling for Frodo, and he just turns around and says, "I'm here, Sam." I love that subdued. We don't need anything. We don't need ketchup right now, man. Just deliver, a nice medium rare, everything else. All the ingredients are there. They're set. Just be. And all he has to do is just turn around and look at us and say the lines. And we know because he's been carrying this weight since, the opening hour of Fellowship. And we've seen what it's done to Bilbo. We've seen what it's done to Boromir. We've seen what it's done, almost did to Faramir, and what it's done to Gollum. We've seen it for the last, 9 hours, and it's all there. All he has to do is say the lines. And as much as I, hate David Mamet, I think he's right. A lot of the time, if you've set the stage properly, an actor really only has to say the words. And this is certainly one of those cases. And I love Elijah Wood for not selling it, for just be there.
Yeah,
and
that line is subtle.
One of our great Austin acting coaches, Paula Russell, used to talk about always be willing to be at zero.
Mm-hmm.
You've been cast in this role for a reason. You've done all the work. You've memorized the lines. You know the story. You know your intent. You know your active verb objective. Be willing to just say the lines and trust that all that work comes through, and also give the audience the opportunity to do their side of the work, which is, there can be so much story happening inside the minds of the audience. And if you push it, you kind of stir the pot too hard and it doesn't feel honest. So that, Elijah Wood finding that truth by just saying the lines. It takes a lot when there's all these cameras and lights and stuff pointed at you and you feel like this should be hard.
Right.
Yeah.
There's explosions and lights flickering on and off, and I need to rise.
It reminds me.
No, lower.
Yeah, exactly. Lower. There was this great moment where this one of the best directors I've ever worked with, named Wes, was directing me when there was that shot where I just needed to look down barrel of the camera, and I was performing, and you were like, "Give me less, give me less." And I think you were just trying to get me to the point where it's like, don't do anything, because all the work is going to happen in the audience's head. And when I finally got it, all of you were at the video village going, "Oh," and that's when I knew. And it's like, wow, sometimes it really is just be at zero, as Paula's words saying, be willing to be at zero.
I love it. I love what a good and Frodo was not in the close up in this performance, but for you, that scene we're talking about, like, we were just right there, cropped in just above your eyes, just below your chin, and everything reads at that point. A small tilt of the head feels like you moved a mountain, like it's just so big. And you do a lot, man. If you were still here in town, I'd be writing movies around you, sir. So, but no pressure.
Hey.
Okay, we're moving back.
No pressure.
He already has,
We
but
have to
you're
go
not
back
here,
now.
so we got to make it anyway.
That's true.
That's essentially it.
All right.
You might have a hard time carving him out of Middle Earth, though. Just be prepared for that battle.
Fair enough. I'm gonna stage a whole scene at the on the docks, and we're gonna have like a little pontoon boat that we load you on, and we hug everyone by.
You just put a cloak over Joe's head. Yeah.
It's going to take a good hour and a half.
Yeah.
People are going to be ready for it to be over when it's over.
And I'll have Todd and Kiona on the side humming.
Playing some songs.
This episode is great. It's going to be us laughing at each other for an hour.
Basically, we're just
exactly. I love you guys.
Speaking of music, though, I did want to touch on before I go into some questions and then an extravaganza of trivia. Sound and music, like the sound design is amazing. And one of the times that really sprang out to me was the sound design of the Theoden, right? The Rohirrim right in, and they're just mowing everyone down. And there's this kind of look of cockiness that crosses Theoden's face right before he hears the Olifants start to storm the field. And he turns, and of course, it's one of those great simple transitions of victory to defeat is on his face, right? And I also love the use of the sword in that scene. The sword moves from screen right to left, and it's almost like going backwards. And that kind of denotes that we're crossing something. And it's like a subtle way of breaking the 180 rule without actually breaking the 180 rule. They do that another time at the beginning of the movie when Smeagol, decides that he's going to take this ring. And instead of like actually rotating the camera, they have Smeagol cross stage from stage right to stage left. And now we've broken the 180 rule without ever actually moving the camera. And so we see the same thing kind of happen with the sword. I think, it's just this simple, like there's a shift in the story happening right now. And instead of using the camera, we're going to allow a prop to do it for us. It's a sword and we're in a battle. So blah, blah, blah. Obvious stuff. But I love the sound design here because once they hit, we kill the music and we go straight into chaotic, right? It's just the rampage of the Olifants and spears being jabbed into people's throats and everything else, right? Just strip the music and let us experience the rage, the chaos of all this happening before we go back to cue the music again.
I love that. I love that the sound of the Olifants is pre-lapped. So you see Theoden and you hear something. It's like, what is he seeing? It's such a great little anticipation.
Oh, it's perfect. And then
I agree.
Sorry, if you want to add on, by all means.
Oh, I was going to say, I always notice that moment too, because the music does go out. But what you hear is that first hit of both things collide. It's pretty poignant because it does catch you surprised, no matter how many times we've seen it. But yeah, I agree.
It lands. Pre-lapping off-screen audio is a really great way to signal a transition that allows you to register it on an actor's face. And that way you get more than one moment. You get like 2, maybe 3 moments, because that first moment is audio. The next moment is a reaction on someone's face. And then the third, moment is seeing what the actor is now seeing, what the character is witnessing. And in that way, rule of threes, you get bang, bang, bang. And that third bang is much louder, air quotes here, much more emotional with punch because you built it up 2 other times before you land this final blow. It's just a great way to cue something to feel bigger than it actually is. Because if you just start there, you may not have the desired effect of the grandiosity that you're searching for. But music, I love the way that there's so much score throughout this. You have to find ways and places to drop it out, or else it's like water running over you. At a certain point, you don't really feel the water anymore. And in order to feel the music, you need to let it go away so that you can feel it again. And they find great places to drop it down so that they can raise it back up. I think the most obvious moment to me, other than something like that, was at the very end when Frodo is saying goodbye to everyone. He's saying goodbye to Merry and Pip, And as he's hugging Mary, they drop it out about halfway through his hug. They just bottom it out. And then he turns around and he sees Sam. And now we can kick it back up again.
Yeah.
And we can right? We can just swell it up, and you can feel the overwhelming emotion that they're feeling. But you need that silence, right? I don't know, Todd, did you feel any other big, interesting uses of audio or music at any point?
I mean, none that I noticed, because I was just, in awe of the visuals. Were like, period. I was like in it. Yeah. I mean, I did notice the dropouts, and I felt them, and that's probably the biggest. That's probably the biggest one for me, would be the end when he sees Sam. But there are plenty of them, and they're all over the place. But the fact that I didn't notice a whole lot says how good it was, because that's the whole point of sound design, music, is to, unless it is literally thematic and important to the story, like the as a whole. I mean, Interstellar is a great example. Then the less notice it, the better. And this is a great example of that. It's like, I was just enjoying the story. And the music could have been a different piece of music, just as good. It would have to be just as good, but it could be a different piece of music, and it would still be, the story would still feel complete and awesome. I mean, because I didn't notice it, I thought it was fantastic. We've talked about it on this podcast many times. Sound is the movie. It is the movie. You could shoot a shitty movie that looks awful and has a bad story, but if it sounds fantastic, it's better movie than you would think, than normal. But you could shoot this movie, and if the sound was bad, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a bad movie. And because I didn't notice it, it's just exactly what it needed to be. So, in my opinion,
I was thinking about you last night, Todd.
I was thinking about you last night too, man. Oh wait, are we talking about something else? Okay, sorry. That's for after podcast.
Wes, how does Terrence Malick do this? I'm so washed out now. It's just hurting. So when we were watching last night, so there's the moment where Frodo and Sam is trying to encourage Frodo to get up because they got to get into Mount Doom already, and he's like, the first of the strawberries will be ripening, and strawberries with cream. And the score is in a major key at that point. It's really low and it's subtle. And then it switches to Frodo, and Frodo's kind of panicked. And he's like, I don't remember the taste of strawberries. I can't see home. I can't remember home anymore. And the score goes minor for a minute. And then it's really, really sad. And then when Sam says, I can't carry the ring, but I can carry you. And not only are we back volume wise, we go back to that glorious major key. Just the Frodo's theme loud in that major key for Sam to pick him up, which is Sam's theme really at that point, and run him up the hill. And it's just like, God, Howard Shore, because I've watched this movie probably 40 times. And that's the first time I've noticed, just that little dip into a minor key to give us that 1, 2, 3 punch.
That is such a great, oh my God, you blew my mind. Yes. And that's the point that I'm making. Thank you for making my point. It's like, you don't notice that. You've seen this movie 40 times.
Until you see it 40 times.
And then you just now notice that, because I haven't seen it. I've seen it 4 times. And you just now noticed that. Like, that's brilliant use of music, of key, of feel, right? And that's literally someone, and I don't think you can always get away with something that on the nose, right? Okay, so Sam's sound is going to be major, and Frodo's sound is going to be minor because he's broken. He's done. That's it. That's all he's got. He doesn't remember what strawberries taste like, and we're just going to literally go from major key to minor key to major key. Boom, boom, boom. That, you can't always do that. But in a story this it's so on the nose. It absolutely works, and great, man. Excellent point. I love that. I want to go back and watch that scene again. By the way, I have
it's incredible. Yeah.
Nice. So, Heather, question for you. And this is a broad, there may not be an answer to this, but I'm curious if there's anything you wish would have been in here that wasn't. So like, yeah, and it could be something that's, you know, apocryphal or not. Like I would have loved, and it's hard because there's already so much content in the books to sit there and say, let's add something is like insanity. Only a madman would say, let's add something that isn't in the books because you're already drowning in content. But I wish at the end, Gimli and Legolas are comparing their final kill counts, and then Aragorn pops in and drops his absurdly high number and crushes them both.
Oh my God. You know what? You know what, Joe? That's the next thing I want you to make. I just want you to make that.
Okay. Short film.
Short film. Yes. Yeah. That would kill.
See, you could run that over the credit call. Right? Yeah. Just have that running in the credits. Oh, that's a big question. So let me see. Oh, okay.
Aliens.
Well, Heather, so in the deep dives this week, the children, their children, Arwen and Aragorn's children, who are alluded to. But
yeah, the deep dives make you wish you had 50 more hours of content, because it's like so many more people and so many more characters. But yes, they tell you in this deep dive, one of them, that they have a son, and that's the son you see, in the vision when Aragorn's picking him up, but they also have 2 daughters. And my question to Joe was, are they mentioned anywhere else? What do their daughters do? Right. So yeah, that's definitely something you could add. I mean, just a little hint of them, or a little scene where you see the kids playing together or something. Right. That's cool. Yeah. It's the deep dives have just, if I hadn't already have charts and graphs in my brain from this one, Mr. House, now I've got more because we did all of these deep dives. I was like, how long do you have for your podcast? Because we could do this for hours. Like
that moment of that's alluded to in the 2 Towers of when Aragorn lives to 210 years, and then he's given the opportunity to choose the moment of his death rather than fading away. And so he chooses his moment, and it's actually his dialogue is given to Elrond in the 2 Towers. Elrond as a warning to Arwen that this is what you're going to experience. You're going to taste mortality. We were watching a Nerd of the Rings about that, and both of us crying on the couch at just the beautiful the words that Tolkien wrote about that moment. You mean, but that's something that we did actually get. It's not something we have to wish for. They found a great story-driven, motivated way to add that incredible moment.
Wow.
Do you mean the line about?
And we didn't have to wait.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the one you mean? I'll let you start that joke, because if you want to talk about that, the line from his mother.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of getting away from the heart of Wes's questions about what would you add that's missing. I do have a note to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
Nice. So
sorry,
Joe, I have 2 questions for you. The first one, if we do know the answer to this question, then high level for me, which is, do we know what happens after the story concludes? Whether that's so we know what happens whatever with Gondor and the rest of his reign as king. So paint a picture for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting. Aragorn rules Gondor for
shit.
he
Lord of the Rings episode 4. Here we go. 3.5 hours.
Joe's droning voice. No, Aragorn is a beloved ruler. He continues fighting. He raises up troops to fight the Haradrim, because even though Sauron's gone from the world, his influence isn't. So there are still people who believed in Sauron who rise up, and but he's generally considered a fair king. He I can't remember how long he rules for, but he dies at the age of 210, and then leaves a couple of he leaves his children. But I think the big things relevant to the story is, as I said before, he travels to Isengard to meet with Treebeard, whose elvish name is Fangorn, and declares Fangorn and Isengard as the realm of the Ents and calls for the reconstruction of Orthanc. So the entire grounds are rebuilt with the help of Gondor. Rohan, I mean, obviously Eowyn and Faramir rule Rohan together. He travels to the Shire and declares that I think it's the mayor of Mickledelving would be Pippin at that point. So Merry and Pippin are there, and he declares the Shire as to be under the protection of the northern kingdoms, but that men may not enter without permission of the hobbits. So he does this kind of tour around all of Middle Earth, basically being a stand-up guy and saying, you can self-govern, and we'll help you however we can. But, he does, there's this interesting video that George R.R. Martin, ever the cynic, says, it's really easy to write that someone was a beloved leader for 100 years, but that's not real. There's no leader who's beloved for 100 years. So what was Aragorn's tax policy? How did he raise his armies and stuff like that?
Was he Republican or Democrat?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a channel called In Deep Geek, where he, mines the text for exactly what it was. But the basic idea is that, and then Gimli and Legolas become the closest friends. They explore these crystal caves together, and I think that wealth is used to rebuild Helm's Deep. And then Gimli and Legolas actually go to the Undying Lands together. So Gimli is the only dwarf who's ever afforded that honor.
Wow.
Trying to think of what I think that's all the salient stuff.
There's
so
lot, yeah.
if I keep going, it's just going to be ridiculous.
Ooh,
but
that's pretty cool. Okay.
Things we would have put in.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
So my last question to you, and we'll hear one big group question, I guess, which is, you, of the four of us, I would think you spent the most time thinking about this story, and considering all the angles of it most thoroughly, what have you. So I would ask you to venture your own opinion on what's the moral of the Lord of the Rings. Like, what's your big takeaway?
Good question. Such a good question.
I think it's about I think you touched on it earlier, is that there are no small roles. Everyone has the potential to make a difference, and anything you can do to contribute to the greater good is always a good. It's the way Tolkien did not like allegory, so he wrote the story so that things like friendship are important, and caring for each other and fighting for each other are important. So I think, I think that's what the moral is. There's a really interesting thing about his approach of varied applicability, that because he didn't tie specific things in the story to specific things in his life. I mean, obviously his life influenced the work. That we get things like, so the Palantir, the Palantiri are this interesting analog to social media right now that Tolkien never could have imagined. But the way he wrote it, he didn't put too much of his own opinions in it. So Tom Shippey makes the point that the Palantir always shows you exactly the truth, but encourages you to draw the wrong conclusion. So, there's one point where Sauron has looked in the Palantir.
What's a Palantir?
The Palantiri, so they're those orbs that you can look into, and they were invented. They were created in Numenor, just as remote work, remote messaging kind of thing. Sauron looks into the Palantir, and he thinks Saruman has the ring because there's a hobbit in Saruman's country. At that point, so he thinks that Saruman has the ring. Wait a minute. I have here. Right. So Sauron thinks that Saruman has the ring. Denethor has been looking at the Gondorian Palantir, and he thinks that Frodo has the ring, and he's taking it. At that point, actually, Sam has the ring. And Aragorn is the only one who kind of sees this. I'm going to look into the Palantir and I'm going to have Sauron draw the wrong conclusion, which is that I have the ring. And that's going to make him think, okay, now I can corrupt Aragorn. And so Aragorn picks it up. And when Aragorn looks into the Palantir, he sees Arwen dead. The Palantir showed him the truth. Arwen was lying with her eyes closed. He drew the conclusion, she has died, so now I don't have much to live for. So and that is so much like social media that you can several people can be exposed to a truth and draw the wrong conclusion from it. And that leads to absolute ruin, and it leads to disagreement and misunderstanding. So all these other things are important to support truth, friendship, contributing, fighting for one another, standing for one another.
Nice. Okay. So final notes from y'all before we drop into the big trivia test. Yeah.
No.
So we can go reverse order here. Joe, what do you got left on your to-do list over there, buddy? I know you got some right hands.
Yeah, there was. So I was going to point this out to you guys. So so Michael Pellerin is the person who made all these, the documentarian who made all the appendix footage. Do you remember the shot where Denethor is being thrown back on his pyre and it's on fire? And in that same frame, you have Gandalf on Shadowfax with this fire. And it's like, you can't have a horse in the same frame as fire. So they must have comped that in. That was actually a plate of glass. And there was a fire way off to the side. And so what you're seeing is the reflection of the fire in that glass. And so that horse is actually in the frame. That fire is not comped. And it's only in for probably 15, 16 frames. But if you pause it, it's like they set that pyre on fire. It just looks so friggin' good. So I love stuff like that. A really interesting thing was, so Cirith Ungol, when Shelob stabs Frodo, and Frodo's looking through that little valley at this tower way off in the distance, that also wasn't a comp. That was an actual tower that was actually pretty close to him, but built to a scale so that it looked super far away. So when you see it through the lens, it was just such a convincing job of adding depth to the frame that tower looks so far away. But then when you see it, the documentarian camera, it's like, wow, that was like right up close to where the action was.
They did that opposite with the ring too, right? They made a giant ring in the snow when they're walking through the snow, and they have the close up on the ring. It looks like they're very close up, but it's actually a giant ring that they made that's like, the size of his head. For perspective, because force perspective.
Lesnie didn't want to use a diopter to get the whole thing in focus. Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is, at the end, this is pretty common knowledge now, but now whenever you see the 4 eagles at the end, because they brought one for Gollum, that was kind of a beautiful act of kindness.
Oh, that's
once you realize
heartbreaking.
That, right?
Yeah,
the one is for him.
That I was wondering that. Actually, I was like, why are there so many? Why is there another extra eagle? Like,
hoping that Gollum.
Wow.
I wanted to talk to you about this, Wes. Darren and I were talking about this. So at the beginning, now this touches a little bit on the extended edition. At the beginning, you see the ring take over. In general, you see the ring take over people very quickly. It takes over Smeagol like instantly. Smeagol and Deagle fight over it instantly. Isildur only had it for a short while and it started working on him. But Frodo, it seemed to take a long, long time. And Sam was near it for a long time. And Darren pointed out that, Bilbo was holding the ring and had the opportunity to kill Smeagol back in The Hobbit. Mm-hmm. And there's something about the strength, not because hobbits are corruptible, because Smeagol was a hobbit. There's something about the Bagginses that he chose pity. And that was him defeating the ring in that moment. The ring cannot have expected that Bilbo wouldn't kill him. So it's it's interesting that it can easily corrupt it. Is it that it can more quickly corrupt the corruptible? The less corruptible you are, the harder a time it has.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's an interesting question. Obviously, the two of you will have more insight into the history of hobbits. But I like that angle on it. I mean, for the same reason that Gandalf doesn't get corrupted, right? Like, it's the lack of desire on Gandalf's part, and the recognition of what the ring is and what it can do to him. But whenever you start talking about Bilbo, it gets way more interesting, right? Because he has no idea what he's found, and yet, he's certainly hurt by it, and it leaves its lasting mark. But he does find a way to maybe bend it more to his will than anything else. There is a shocking, now, depending on how far you want to take it, right? I think it's worth noting that Sauron was still around 100 years before Lord of the Rings, or whenever it was, 60 years? What's the age gap between Hobbit and
thousands? Sauron was called Gorthauer in the first age.
Between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, what are we talking, like 50 years?
60 years?
That's 60 years.
60?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so you know, Sauron's around, and yet Bilbo's over here popping the ring on and off like it's nobody's business, and never really gets caught. I would like to, reconcile that by thinking of Bilbo as this more pure spirit, and I think it goes back to what you said, the corruptible,
right?
And Bilbo having the best of intentions. It was an act of necessity, not one of malice. The way he treated Gollum in their first meeting, and so there's something in that, the hearts of those hobbits, maybe.
Yeah.
And
then Heather's Gilrain. Sorry.
Wait, what? I was just going to say, one of the deep dives that we had on the background just yesterday, even though we don't get him in the films at all, but Tom Bombadil is virtually, it doesn't bother him at all. He puts it on, he looks through the ring. There's like a quizzical moment they're talking about. You see his blue eye just looking through it, and he just laughs, and he puts it on, and it does nothing to him. So that's one of those things. Another thing we would have added is to actually have Tom Bombadil in it.
Right.
Good a depiction of him.
The most impossible character of the whole series. He's just such an interesting, odd, and it's his indifference, right? And that's largely why I've always heard it argued why Tom Bombadil didn't take the ring in the first place, being someone unaffected by it. It is also because maybe he's easily distractible, and he just is just indifferent to everything that's going on anyway.
Yeah, they were posing a theory. There's like 3 different theories of who they think he might be. One of the theories was that because Tolkien was devout Catholic, that was his depiction of God in the universe. Like Tom Bombadil would be like a Jesus.
Eru-Ilúvatar.
Yeah, being
uncorruptible.
In the world, but uncorruptible, but hiding as Tom Bombadil. So I love that theory. That's just one
cool.
of many, but
Jesus. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Nice. What else do you think, Joe?
And
go ahead, baby.
I was going to say, and so as far as last little zingers I have written down here, one of Heather's favorite moments is Gilrain. So Elrond and Aragorn speaking Aragorn's mother's last words to him.
I touched on this
right. What does he say?
Yeah.
Do you remember what he said?
Well, you say it. You go ahead.
Right. He's So in Elvish, and you can see it with the subtitles. I gave hope to the Dunedain, but I've kept none for myself. So hope is capitalized in the text, and Aragorn's name in Elvish when he was a kid was Estelle, which is the Sindarin word for hope. So she's saying literally, I gave hope to the Dunedain.
Wow.
I gave my son to the Dunedain, but have kept none for myself. Because
one of the tearful moments on the couch was us going, that's why it's a capital H. So if you're not looking at the text or have it up, you might miss that. You might think the literal hope, which is fine, but that means and has so much more weight when Lord Elrond finds
Mind-blowing.
him to give him the reforged sword. It's just like stab me in the heart. But yeah,
And it's to finally convince Aragorn to take the paths of the dead. He says the first line, and then Aragorn finishes it.
speaks his mother's words. Yeah, it's just
So great.
Can't wait to
I'll
read
be
the quote of the day.
proud.
You'll see. You'll see.
Oh,
You'll see.
yay.
Nice.
You'll see.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's good for me.
Okay.
I've got like 100 more notes, but
Yeah, we could keep going.
Of course. That'll be in the extended version of the podcast.
There's an extended version.
No.
Jesus.
No.
I love it.
The
So-
return of the pestle.
So now we'll have a battle, a trivia battle to determine who is the Lord of the Lord of the Rings.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So
Oh, I don't know.
I'm so bad at
if one of you gets it wrong, gets an answer wrong, the other one can steal. And there's only 9 questions. I got 5 aimed at Joe and 4 aimed at. Although I'm beginning to think all these questions are too easy after hearing you quote the original Elvish. I think I've underestimated these questions. So Joe, first you. Who was the last king of Gondor?
Before Aragorn?
Correct.
Who was oh my god, I have no idea. I'm so bad at Lord of the Rings trivia.
Heather.
Who was the last king before the line of stewards?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a good question.
Disappointed. Heather, anything? No?
I said,
Oh man,
I'm gonna show up
have
at
I
your
caught
door.
any of this by osmosis? Like I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I've ever heard. Okay. Stalemate.
Yep.
That
So the last king of Gondor before the stewards was Eowyn. Probably mispronouncing that, but he was the 33rd and last king of Gondor. Eowyn, he's got 2 little dots over his A, so I'm guessing he's Scandinavian in origin. So,
North.
Heather,
All
what
right.
is Merry and Pippin's relationship?
They are cousins, correct?
Correct.
I'm asking the.
Oh, sorry.
Like cousins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First cousins, if you wanted
Could be
to
twice
drill
removed.
down, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Joe. So one to Heather. Joe, name an ancestor of Shadowfax.
my god. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
I swear, do you even watch Lord of the Rings, bro?
Do you even work for Weta?
Oh my god.
Mm,
You
It's
told me
right
to
on
do
the
it.
tip of my
I
tongue.
know.
I can't remember.
this
Damn it.
is first year ring stuff, man. God.
I'm pretty sure you've told me, but I don't know if I know it either.
I think I have. Yeah, we've
You have told
talked
me.
about it.
Yeah.
I cannot remember.
It'll come back to him at 3 in the morning.
Felaroth. Yeah. He's
Yes. Yep. Felaroth. Felaroth.
Shadowfax is a descendant of Felaroth. Okay.
Of the first
Heather,
age.
what is Sauron's race? Oh.
Wait, what? Why is my brain? Oh man, I've got so
Okay.
many facts going through my head.
Yeah.
Okay, skip
I can
me.
steal.
Skip me.
Steal.
You
I can steal. He is a Maiar. He's a
Correct.
Maiar, like Gandalf. The
This is
This is why
Balrog.
we shouldn't be doing the deep dives.
We're all tied up. We're all tied up. Joe,
Nice.
One to one.
now, did I already say that one of these is going to be a trick question? It's not. I'm not going to say which, but I just had a note.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't know when it comes, but let's see. Your next question is the army of the dead, before they were Oathbreakers, were men of which mountain? Ooh.
Cannot remember. It is not even in my head. Oh, I'm so bad at trivia. Oh,
Heather, any idea? Okay.
Oh,
That look on your face says no.
no, I've got a lot of stuff going now.
All right, we're going with the White Mountains or Arid Nimraeus.
Oh.
Yeah, as everyone knows. Yeah, that's
yeah. I wouldn't have
again,
got.
common knowledge.
He's like, we did not do our homework
I
on
love
this
how
part.
you're like making him feel like
Yeah,
total shit. This is so good. So good.
Okay, this
Lord of
one
the
I
Rings,
realized was too
yeah.
easy when Heather, unprompted, already gave me the answer to this. And so, Heather, what is the name of Arwen's necklace?
Even star.
Yeah, damn it. You're freaking wearing it right now.
I'm wearing
I'm
it.
wearing it.
Yeah.
And I also have Galadriel's ring too, but you can't see that.
Oh,
This is
okay.
Ninya. This is Galadriel's ring of
Gorgeous.
power.
So Joe, you're getting curb stomped. And so Joe, what is the Witch King of Angmar's real name? He used to be a king.
Oh, but-
What was
Yep,
his real name?
we just watched a whole Nerd of the Rings about him the other day, and he said the name. There is no way I'm going to be able to remember it. Oh my god! Because he's one. I think he's the only one that we know the name of that Tolkien named. Right? Do you remember? You remember, Heather?
Maybe it's the whole being put on the spot. Because that's what I mean. We've
Yeah,
got too much
that's-
information
So
from our deep
No,
dive.
I'm not.
Okay.
Not going to remember.
this one is a trick question because it is never given from all the research that I did.
Oh, really?
Never actually given. Yeah. They just
So then
call-
which one
There's
do we
one of
have?
them that has a name though.
yeah, there is. But they just call this one Angmar
Oh, okay,
because
so-
you never actually hear his name.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
All right, Heather. Where is Gimli from?
The Mines of Moria. No.
Ooh, chance to
why do I feel
steal,
like-
Joe.
Oh wait. Chance to steal. Go.
The-
He's gonna
the
get
Blue
my vote
Mountain.
Anyway.
The Blue Mountains. That's right.
Why do I always no? The Mines of Moria is where his cousin Balin
Yeah,
is.
that's right.
So, sorry.
Yep.
Correction.
Forever.
All right.
I didn't get it, but I redeemed myself a little bit.
Final question to Joe for the chance to win. We're all tied up at twos.
To win it all.
Okay, the orcs were elves. What race of elf were they?
Did you know that? We just watched a big thing on that too.
Yeah.
Actually.
The original.
I might
I'll
be
just
helping
guess
you.
Noldorian. The Noldor.
They
No,
were
chance
first
to
dates.
Because the
steal.
Noldor came way after.
Yeah, I don't. Sure, I don't know any of those words.
Like, shut up, Heather, go.
I'm just thinking that they're from the first age, the first elves, and
Yeah.
we just watched the whole thing on the Valor. But
Close enough. So
I
they
don't know
were
their
in the
names.
Silmarillion. The orcs are East elves, the Avari.
oh,
Yeah.
we
The
should have known
Avari.
that.
I wouldn't have gotten
Because
that.
we
As
did
they
just
say,
watch a thing
you
on
learn
that.
something new every day. Yeah.
I knew
Yeah.
This is what they had in
every
mind
Look at
when they
Wes
came up with that
teaching
phrase.
us.
Todd had it all.
You guys are stupid.
He's the Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
I don't know.
Oh, well played, y'all. I'm glad I didn't go too easy on you.
Well done, sir.
So yeah, I think that's all I got for today. Todd, final thoughts on the film.
The only thing I wanted to add was kind of something that I started with, which is I see this movie as a metaphor for life. In general, I feel like we all go through things and we think that things should be easier than they are, and when we hit roadblocks, which we always do, sometimes we think of it as like, I'm not meant to do this, and we get bogged down, and this shouldn't be so hard, or something's telling me to stop or whatever. But that's all fake, and it's not real. Just like the power of the ring was fake in a way, because it affected some people more than others, right? And it takes other people around you. What?
Just pretend.
Oh,
to
that was so
hear
good.
everything he's hearing.
You
oh,
dropped
that
out.
was good.
Oh,
Oh no, you froze.
Oh no, it dropped
you
out.
couldn't hear
Sorry,
me?
Todd.
Okay, well, don't worry, because it's recorded, so you'll get
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
You'll hear it when you listen to the
Okay,
podcast.
cool.
And you need people around you like Sam to tell you, don't give up, take my hand, don't let go. That's it. And to get you through. It's brilliant. you know, and I use it as metaphor for life. Every time I watch it, I learn something else, or it's reminding me to keep going. That's all I'll say. Yeah.
Nice. Heather.
What about you, Wes?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny that, you know, I've seen this. If Joe's seen it 40, then I feel like I've seen it once, but I've probably seen it 20 times at least, maybe 25, once a year minimum, and sometimes multiple times throughout the year. And man, if this movie isn't timeless, there's a small collection of films that simply can never be remade. And I never thought growing up I would get to see a movie come out that should never be remade, right? There's no more Casablancas or Gone with the Winds or Wizard of Oz, right? It just felt like every story we're going to make is going to be retold and rebooted, and that's fine. That's life, until this came out. And I was just like, man, sometimes you don't need to say it again. It's been said, you know, and this film is just such a journey. I read this, the books in high school, and I had a really hard time imagining everything I was seeing. I'm not that kind of reader, you know. I just struggled, and so watching some of these moments that I struggled to realize, like the Army of the Dead, I did not understand in high school. I was reading this story, and I just could not. I can, as a reader, I need things built up and dramatized a little bit over the top so that I can understand what I'm seeing. And whenever someone just kind of flatly says, yeah, there's an army of dead people under this mountain, you're going to go grab them, it's too simple. It's too direct. And I needed it to be more like garnished than it was on the page. And having something like this, it's just absolutely astronomically incredible what Peter Jackson did. And you know, whatever flaws that I see, and I prefer the DVD version over the Blu-ray version still, it still is just absolute magic. And you can't help but watch it and just say, I got to go make something. I don't care what it is. If it's a pile of sticks in the backyard that I'm going to call like a tent, I don't care. Like, I need to go do something and create and be better. God, this film. Yeah. It's hard to not want to watch it all the time, you know? Yeah. So
well said.
Heather, please, what's your lasting impression?
I will agree that these films are timeless, and they have been a huge part of our lives for so long. I knew them before my husband. I adore its content now to my bones. All of the deep dives we've been doing, I feel like it's still shifting. I learn more all the time, as you just heard during our quiz. But it is a huge metaphor that, you know, the family you choose, you keep them close, you keep them tight to the chest, because you might need them to give you that hand, to keep you going. And, but yeah, they've been a part of our lives for a long time. And every time we watch them, it just reminds you to take a look inside. To take a look inside, but to also, keep those people close to you who build you up, and they hold you up, and they prop you up when you need them to. And now we live in Middle Earth, and it's hard not to just want to go out to all the locations all the time. If you didn't have to work, that's what we'd be doing all the time. But every year we watch them at least once. Usually it's autumn time, you know, in the States. Now our seasons have swapped, so now it's about now that we watch it over here. But yeah, it's being over here where they created the films is absolutely incredible. If you have a bad day in Middle Earth, all you got to do is just go to the Weta Cave, and your mood will be changed instantly when you think about the feats that they had to go to, or if you watch the making ofs and you see how they had to create rain and block wind. And we stood on the site, you know, in the Canterbury Plains on Edoras, Mount Sunday. That view is my favorite one in the whole entire world. Nothing's beat it yet. But you do a 45-minute hike and you're standing up there and you realize, oh, they never found Peter Jackson's glasses that blew down the hill. And they're giving you all these facts and you're like, we are actually standing in Middle Earth. So yeah, when I say you may never be able to crowbar us away from here, that's probably quite true for both of us. But the films mean so much to us, right? The films mean so much to us, and they always will. But every time we watch them, it's heartfelt, and you have a restored faith and hope in humanity, essentially. I could go on, but yes, I'll let my honey continue.
Joe, final word.
Yeah. So there was a time, in the 70s and 80s where genre film was not super highly regarded. I remember there was live action Dungeons and Dragons television series that I actually ducked out of a hockey game that my dad had taken me to, feigning a stomach ache because I'm like, it's Dungeons and Dragons on TV. I got to see this. It was the most horrible piece of shit. The filmmakers and the actors obviously just loathed it. Everybody who made it hated it. And there just seemed to be such contempt in the industry for it. And so to see, in the 90s, this kind of stuff being taken seriously for the literature that it is. And to me, it reached a high watermark with the Lord of the Rings films of showing respect to the source material and love for the source material. And it was just so glorious to see it and for the entire world to embrace it. Because in the 80s, you were not cool if you were a Lord of the Rings guy. And if you were also a Rush guy, it was just over for you.
Poor Jeff.
But yeah, watching the whole world be moved by it was super special. So yeah, they'll always mean that to me, that the whole world kind of came together. Am I really saying this? Am I really saying that? So everybody eventually got to learn that I was right. This stuff is cool.
Yeah, there you go.
Really what I'm saying?
That's it. Mic drop. Boom.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's awesome. So real quick around the horn, recommendations for the week. Heather, what are you going to recommend?
Oh, goodness. I know this is a question that you pose. Can you come back to me?
Yes, we can.
Well, Heather, you were going to recommend the Nerd of the Rings channel.
Oh, yeah. Actually, that would be, Nerd of the Rings. And then there was one other one we were watching too. But his content especially, and Deep Geek is the other one, particularly the one about Melkor and why the name changes. And that's the only hint I will give you. You have to go do your own homework.
Nice. Joe, what do you got?
I've got to recommend all, I don't know how many hours there are, 50, 60 hours of appendices for the 3 films. They're a little hard to come by now because they haven't been, as far as I know, they haven't been re-released. But it really is kind of a film school. There's just so much you can learn about the process and about the people and about the technology that was invented, and kind of the special, not only that it was in New Zealand, but at a special time in New Zealand that kind of the country came together to make these films a reality. So if you can get your hands on the Blu-rays or the DVDs of any of the films, each one of them comes with 2 or 3 discs of just making of documentary. And if you're at all interested in film or at all interested in Lord of the Rings, I think they're a fantastic, touching, educational watch. I just love them.
Nice. Todd?
Yeah, so I was going to recommend one thing, but actually, so my whole family and I, really my kids and I, we just got through all the MCU, the entirety of it, all of them. Yes, me and my 9 and 6-year-old, we went through all of them. That kind of dad. Well, because he wanted to see Spider-Man, and we're like, well, you can't just see Spider-Man. You got to watch them all. And then he was like, well, what about Thanos? Oh, you want Thanos? I'll give you Thanos, but you got to go through 30 other movies. So we slowly went through it. It took us a couple of months. But I'm going to recommend Endgame because it is, when you talk about epic stories, and it was, not all the movies are great throughout the entirety, but for 10 years, they just told story after story after story to lead to a certain point. And damn it, did it pay off in the end. I had my whole family, including my son, crying on the couch, you know, and it was such a moving experience for me as a father, you know, 'cause I had that experience watching all the Lord of the Rings with my son, and then going through all MCU and watching Endgame with my whole family, and we're all crying. It was just the best. It was just the best. So I recommend the entirety of MCU. How's that? Because you can't just watch Endgame.
That's
You
right.
won't get it. You got to watch them all. So there.
Nice.
That was my first Weta credit was Endgame.
I was about to say that too. His first credit the
Ooh.
year after we got here, the first year.
Be sure to watch the Weta credit.
Was Endgame?
Yeah.
That was
Oh my
Endgame,
God. Dude, I'm going
I
to
had
look.
friends
That's
who had been there for a while who hadn't had a credit yet, and I got it on Endgame. So just luck of the draw.
amazing. Oh my gosh.
Nice. I'm going to have a weird recommendation, which is I can only imagine how much energy it takes for making this movie, or if you're one of the hobbits or Aragorn, like he's probably sipping mochas and cappuccinos every morning in order to get his juices going, you know, for battle. And so but not all coffee is good coffee. So I'm going to recommend coffee filters, which I know sounds really weird. But about 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, there was a study published, and it was this huge analysis of people ranging from like 20 to 70 years old and looking at the effects of coffee on them. And they found that there are a lot of great effects, but there's also a lot of bad effects. And apparently what they discovered was if you filter your coffee like a paper filter, not just any kind of filter, but paper filter, it removes the oils in the coffee, and they think that oil is really bad for your heart. And so by filtering your coffee, you're able to get all these nice benefits without any of the negative benefits. And so I, for the last 2 years, have been, you know, filtering I French press it, and then I'll pour it through a paper filter. And I will say, I noticed a pretty immediate difference within a couple of weeks. I just felt and maybe it's a placebo. I'll grant you that possibility. But I swear I felt a little bit more, I don't know, less pressure in my heart. I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes you just feel your heart acting a little jittery. And that's all gone away. Like I haven't felt that since. And I've never been a huge coffee drinker. And so, yeah, I will link you to the New York Times article where I discovered it, and one other one, so that you can read more about this study. But yeah, so it sounds silly, but paper coffee filters is what I'm recommending this week. Yeah.
That is amazing, because I've been having a lot of trouble with coffee lately. We talked about me like cutting out coffee, and I've been doing it, and I hate it. But I've been having problems. I'm going to try to do that. Thank you for that recommendation.
You're welcome. And so stay tuned for next week. Are we good on this one, Todd? We're going to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So stay tuned next week. We're going to take a look at the new movie from Alex Garland, my favorite writer, called Men. Yeah. And so don't just go Googling men. You'll probably run into some images you don't like, but attach Alex Garland to it, and suddenly, you know, you might have a positive result. Yeah. So we're going to take a look at his new film and see what's going on there. And if you're enjoying this show, don't forget, drop us a review, subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to our podcast. And don't be afraid to leave us a note if there's something you want us to cover. We got some more requests coming up in the coming weeks that we will finally get to. But yeah, and if you want to leave a note on this episode in particular, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/The Return of the King.
And we will leave you with a quote of the day from Charles Dickens, what I was telling you guys earlier. It's always something to know you've done the most you could, but don't leave off hoping, or it's of no use doing anything. Hope to the last. So great.
Wow. Yeah.
So
so relevant to this.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Good choice, Wes.
Well done.
Yeah, you get that feeling, right? Whenever Gandalf is trying to get everyone, like, or I guess Aragorn more explicitly, is trying to get everyone geeked up, right? Even Theoden has that moment when he has to look his men in the eyes 3 days before battle, and they're like, we can't win this. He's like, you're right, we can't. And here we go. Like, you can only do that one way, right? You can only ride into your demise just hoping. You don't know what's going to come. You know, you really can't win based on the way things are right now. But if you're going to fight to the end, you need to have some kind of hope that says, I don't know where victory comes from, but I'm not stopping anyway. And here we go. Yeah, I don't know. I just was curious about quotes from Hope, and when I see Dickens come up in contrast to another great writer like Tolkien, I got to hear what he's got to say.
Couldn't agree more.
Incredible.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Joe, Heather, it's been such a pleasure. Obviously, this has been a long one, but one of my favorites, as it always is whenever we have you guys on the podcast. Thank you for wasting your day with us. We really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you for having us. And it's not a waste. We love it.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Thank
Careful.
you. And thank you guys for the pestle, because it's just constantly a joy. It's only disappointing when I haven't seen the film, so I can't listen. I have to wait till I see the film so I can listen. But you keep me company in the shower, apparently. On my way to work, on my way home from work. I'm always getting something out of your discussion. I love this podcast. So thank you guys for keeping it up.
Wow.
And we get to hear your voices because we missed you. We're not in the same city with you anymore. So.
Yeah, right back at you. Thank you guys so much. That means a lot to us. And to all of you out there, just like Joe and Heather said, if there's a film that you guys would like to see us review, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Please, recommend us to your friends, subscribe, review us. All that stuff really helps and really matters and really helps us, Wes especially, keep this going. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
I'm Joe.
I'm Heather.
Go watch some movies.
For Frodo. If you start in the camera, you can do the whole move.
Yeah. Oh yeah, here we go. Here we go. Wait.
That is perfect.